Thank you, Leah. So I asked Leah to recite that poem she wrote years ago about the moon because one of the questions I'm asked over and over again by people that are seekers or curious or skeptics is, Pastor Bob, I understand you believe in the Bible, but it's such a big book, and I understand you believe in Jesus, but he's a complex person of history. Couldn't God have made it more simple? Like, couldn't he write his name in the sky or my name in the sky, and then I believe? Now, that's an old argument from Bertrand Russell, the famous atheist of a couple centuries ago, where when he was asked if he died and there really was a God, what would he say to God? And he would say, God, you didn't give me enough evidence. The thing is, God gave us a lot of evidence, almost too much evidence. He's the painter of the heavens, the painter of the sky, the starry world above us, the moral world inside. God is whispering every day. The heavens declare the glory of God. The earth is his handiwork. Listen, day by day it's uttering forth speech. Day by day, God is talking to us. We're in the third week of a series called Reasons I Believe. In 2026, I want to publish a book called Reasons I Believe, 21 Infallible Reasons Why There Is a God, and you can know him. He's personal. And I want to jump into reason number 5 today, and you know what it is. Leah just told us about it. The moon. The moon. There she is. Now, if you've ever seen the moon on the horizon, it's really not that big. Your mind's playing a trick on you, and that's one of the glorious things in the moon, and I'll get to it in a few minutes. The moon is overwhelming. It's so overwhelming, it's been co-opted by fables and the occult and spirituality. It's kind of like rainbows. People are just mystified by it, so they spin all these stories. In 2019, we had the 50th anniversary of landing on the moon. And there were all these books that came out. And I was thinking back where I was when we landed on the moon, and I had this vague remembrance, I think it was first grade, of them wheeling in the TV. Remember they would do that? There's all smart boards now. They wheeled the TV in for Watergate or for the Bay of Pigs or something. But I remember wheeling the TV in for the moon landing. I don't think it was the first, I think it was the second. But 2019, 50th anniversary, all these new books came out. Of course, the leading book, most of you have, Good Night Moon. Anybody have that book, right? 40 million copies. I'm in the wrong profession. 40 million copies, Good Night Moon. The moon is incredible. But is it a reason to believe in God? Is it a big deal, little deal, or no deal? It's a huge deal. Do you know why? We wouldn't be here. We would not be here without the moon. Now, there are other planets with moons. There are other moons in the solar system, but our moon is rare. In fact, there's nothing like it. The size of it is strange. There's no moon. 27% the size of the Earth, 240,000 miles away. Again, there's nothing like it in the solar system. Let me give you 4 reasons why you're eating and drinking and working and having fun. The moon is working on your behalf, okay? Number 1, it's the gravitational anchor to the Earth. You know how a boat has an anchor? Well, the moon is our anchor, and you can go out and Google this yourself, but it basically stabilizes the Earth at a 23.5 degree tilt. And you're probably thinking, big deal. Well, it is a big deal because it keeps everything steady, right? You want to be on a boat, have everything placid and steady? If you ever understood what would happen without the moon stabilizing the Earth's tilt, it would be pure chaos. So one time I had to move a goldfish tank. It wasn't this size. It was way bigger. It was one of these about this big tanks. And I know the right way to move a tank. Drain all the water, put the fish in a little bag, move it, put all the water back in, dump the fish back in. But I only had to move it from here to there, and I'm like, Now again, I had this giant tank. Now look, even this, when I start to walk, you probably can't see it. It's wobbling. No matter how straight I walk, it's wobbling. That's what would happen to our planet without the moon. We would wobble, which means we'd have tsunamis, we'd have 10 years of tidal waves, and we'd have 10 years of heat. Things would be falling all over the place. Everything would be unstable. There'd be total chaos without the gravitational anchor. Now, Leah mentioned tides. Most of you come in here know the moon's responsible for tides. I could care less about tides until Monica and I joined a boat club. We had to pass a series of in-water and out-of-water tests, which was crazy making. And then they finally told us, look, it's not if you're going aground, it's a matter of when you're going aground, so you better learn how to read buoys. So every time we go out on this boat, it's supposed to be very enjoyable, and here we are, like, we're looking for buoys everywhere, and boom, eventually it happens, right? And I hate when I go out and it says low tide, right? Because it's not going to be a great boating day. The reason there's tides is because tides circulate nutrients literally around the globe so all fish life can flourish. They regulate coastal ecosystems, and they make sure the water's not stagnant because it would smell, right? It's also the reason you can pee in the ocean, right? Can't pee in a pool, you can pee in the ocean, right? Because of the moon. The third thing the moon does, it's a gravitational shield. It's the Earth's football helmet. It's the fullback of Earth. Give me the picture with the craters, right? So you've seen craters on the Earth. This is like a super telescope. Because the Earth has no atmosphere, no erosion, no plate tectonics, it preserves its impact history. Look at all the hits it took for you. And it's also in just the right place. When it takes the hit, everything misses us. Isn't that a great coincidence? It's a light source, right? The Bible calls it the lesser light. A lot of people depend on moonlight. Sailors, it's used for navigation, gives us rhythm in life, believe it or not. And here's the one that knocks my socks off, and I talk about it in every reason. For all the clinical and practical reasons of the moon, beauty. Why does it give us beauty? Why observation? Now, this is way too complicated for Sunday morning, but try and wrap your mind around this. The distance of the Earth to the sun is 93 million miles. The distance of the Earth to the moon is 240,000 miles, which is 400 times the distance. You might think, big deal. Yet, when they're in the sky, they're the same size. One of the top 3 experiences I ever had was climbing Mount Sinai. So sometimes when we go to Israel, we'll go to Egypt first, because why go all that way and not see the pyramids and statue of Ramses and Luxor and all? And so on the final day, we tour, and about 6 o'clock we get down to, there's a ratty hotel down at Sinai, and we tell everybody, look, if you're up to it, meet us in the lobby, 11 at night, we're going to climb Sinai. It takes about an hour to get there, now it's midnight. All the ladies get on camels, guys got to hoof it. The ladies are on camels for 2 hours. And then they tell us, look, when you get to almost the top, you're going to think you're there. There's 750 more steps. Now, there's a bailout station there. It's like a little hut with a mattress. Ramen noodles are like $8. A Coke's $4. And you could just sleep and not get there. So we get there, and I think, okay, 750 steps, probably like the art museum where Rocky is, right? Boulders this big. 750 of these guys. But we get there. And by the way, if I wasn't the tour guide, I would have quit. I whined, I complained like nobody's business. I get there at daybreak. It's 30 degrees colder, freezing. And the moon's here, and the sun's here, the same size. Wow. Observation. And by the way, this is the perfect place to observe it. And it's the only observable place in the universe. One more, the diameter of the sun is 856,370 miles. The diameter of Earth is 2,159 miles. You might say, big deal, but we have another coincidence, about 400 times, which gives us a perfect eclipse that we get to view. Hugh Ross, the famous child prodigy cosmologist, former atheist turned Christian, said the moon silently proclaims what the heavens declare, a universe not of chaos, but of careful choreography. Ross said it's as if God hung a lamp in the night sky, not only to light the darkness, but to whisper that we are not here by accident. Day by day, whispering to us. One of the questions you have to ask if you're a skeptic is, why would a universe born of chaos, and that's what science tells us, produce such elegance and beauty? If it was all practical, if it was all evolution, why is it so beautiful? See, the truth is God did write his name in the sky, but are we looking? Are we listening? Are we watching? the painter of the heavens, on his canvas. In Genesis chapter 1, we get the creation of the world in 6 days. In verse 14, it says, then God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens, and here's their purpose, to divide the day from night, and let them be for signs and seasons and for days and years. So we get a calendar. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on earth, and so it was. And then God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night. I love this verse. Oh, by the way, he just made the stars too. Like, just afterthought. He just flung the stars out there. God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth and to rule over the day. Notice that word keeps coming back, and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good, and evening and morning came the 4th day. Now, by the time Moses writes this down, the sun and the moon had already been deified in Egypt. So he says it's the greater light and the lesser light. Now, the book of Romans tells us there's general revelation, right? No matter how much you want to put it down and suppress it, it says that the creation is telling us of the glory of God, even his godhood. Now, we need special revelation, right? We need the Bible to inform us about God, his attributes, but general revelation get you pretty far. None of these reasons alone will stand, but start to put them together, you get it. Here's the genius of Leah's poem. The moon that gives us beauty, balance, and awe never parades itself. Doesn't look for the limelight, doesn't strut itself. You know what it does? Reflects the sun. Ooh. You and I are image bearers. We're made in the image of God. We are reflecting Jesus. We're reflecting the sun. The church is full of gifts and talents. We don't take all the credit. We're just image bearers working together. The moon does its job. It does what it was designed to do. We could go on and on and on about all that the moon teaches us if we'd ever listen. David in Psalm 8 verse 3 said, when I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you set in place. What is man, God, that you're even mindful of him or that you would consider him? God, this universe you created that's filled with awe and wonder, why would you ever consider man? And of course, David knows the answer. We're the apple of his eye. We're the pinnacle of his creation. We're the greatest thing he's ever done. David believed the moon was a reason to believe. Do you? Do you hear its whisper? Or are you like the Egyptians who were looking at everything on this level because they had the Nile? Or are you like the Jews who were told to look up to the early and the latter rains? You can see life on the horizontal, you can see life on the vertical. The moon doesn't glow, but somehow it kisses the horizon. It shimmers with beauty. That original picture I gave you was an optical illusion. How many times have you ever been to the beach or you look at the horizon, you see this big old fat moon? It's really not that big. Your mind is actually playing a trick on you, and nobody knows why. You know why it's playing the trick on you? My answer? Just wants to give you more beauty. You know, you're on a lake or you're down the shore, it's like, hey, let me throw you some more beauty at you. And then you get on the highway and it's back in the sky. God's amazing. It's so cool. I'll give you a couple closing tidbits of the moon. So remember I told you 2019 all those books came out? So now they have all these theories of how the moon got there, right? Which is strange because even science doesn't know how everything began. They'll tell you natural selection, evolution is what moved everything along. But even Richard Dawkins says the universe is looking for its Darwin. But they have all these theories. And you know, one of the theories, Eric McTaxis writes in his book about atheism, and I don't know if Eric believes in it or not, but I guess he just writes it as a common theory. And even he has to write, this sounds like science fiction, right? You know what the leading theory of why the moon is there? You're going to belly laugh. It shot off from Earth. A piece of Earth just shot off and formed a perfect sphere and gave us tides and When we talk about rainbows and moons and things, we're talking about the fine-tuning of the universe. That all the dials seem to be set for life to be here, which the skeptics say, yeah, that's why we're here. All the dials are set. But even atheists believe you have to have an argument against it. Even Richard Dawkins, I've given you the quote, says, you have to have an argument against this. Christopher Hitchens, one of the leading atheists, now passed, he wrote a book, God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything. He said every atheist, every non-believer must have an argument for the fine-tuning of the universe. He said it's one of the greatest arguments for theism. Now, I want to help you guys a little bit. People like Christopher Hitchens and Dawkins and all these people, they all go to Cal Berkeley or Cambridge or Oxford. They're all seen as brilliant. This is why I'm writing to the common man. Because these guys can fool you with their knowledge. So here's a guy who is a literary genius, smart as heck, beats most Christians if you look at debates on the internet. I'm going to give you 3 quotes and show you how they can't pass muster of Logic 101 at Widener, okay? Combating the fine-tuning universe, Hitchens said, why design billions of galaxies, most of which are unreachable and uninhabitable, just to produce one tiny corner with life? Quote 2, we live on a planet that is slowly being burned by its own sun and will eventually be incinerated. This is not a finely tuned place. Quote number 3, that doesn't get you to Jesus, doesn't get you to a loving Father. At best, it gets you to a cold, indifferent clockmaker. Let me give you a backstory on the clockmaker. So William Paley wrote a book called Natural Theology, which Dawkins and Hitchens agree is the greatest argument. If I was taking a walk in the woods and I tripped over a rock, I could look at the rock and say it was always there. But if I took a walk in the woods and tripped over a watch or stepped on a watch, I'd have to say it was designed. But Hitchens is saying God is a bad watchmaker, and Dawkins is saying he's a blind watchmaker. Can I give you my take? Can I give you my take? And this will shoot Hitchens down. We're so excited about going to the moon, and we get there, and it's void. We're so excited about Mars, void. By the way, Blaise Pascal, a Christian French philosopher, he agreed with Hitchens. Don't ever go down the road on this argument because you're looking at desolation. You know why I think it's a great argument? It's God saying that's what Earth would look like without me. Without my involvement, that's what it would look like. When you look at an animal, God's saying that's what you would be like without a soul. And yet I breathe life into you. And so I think we're a privileged planet. We're a privileged people. And I think the moon tells a story, and it's a reason to believe. Okay, let's go from the starry heaven to the moral world inside. Reason number 6 why I believe there's a God is 9/11. Now, almost anybody who's alive knows where they were at 9/11. It's one of those events in history, right? Like, where were you when JFK got shot? I was learning how to walk 2 days before my first birthday. My mom claims I walked at 6. I think she exaggerated it. But, I was toddling around, I guess. The Challenger. Remember that? I was in a Miami airport, and they were just starting to hang like box TVs, weird-looking TVs, and everybody's huddled around, and the Challenger had just blown up. Where were you when OJ, the Bronco chase, was going on? Remember that? Yeah, I was watching the NBA playoffs, watched it in real time. Where were you when the Eagles won the Super Bowl? We can go on and on. So 9/11, I'm at my office, and a friend calls, and he says, hey, what would happen if a plane flew into a building? I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, well, I'm watching TV, and there's a hole in a skyscraper. I'm like, what, a Piper Cub hit it? And then all of a sudden he goes, ah! The second plane hit. And then, of course, we got a TV, and the rest is history. We found out it was Al-Qaeda, 17 terrorists, radical Islamists. And there was a cultural debriefing of that moment, etc. And a man named Victor Stegner, again, if you want to get intimidated, Victor Stegner comes up with this quote. Again, he's a great wordsmith. He said, science will fly you to the moon, but religion flies you in the buildings. I'll say that again. Leave it up there. Science flies you to the moon, religion flies you in the buildings. Now, that's meant to trick the armchair guy or gal who's never going to look into it, like, yeah, that's great. Again, doesn't pass Logic 101 at Widener. So I've been down to the Smithsonian Institute. One of the places I like to go down there is the Aerospace Museum. Hanging in the ceiling is the Enola Gay. Everybody know what the Enola Gay is? It's the airplane that dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killed over 200,000 people. Anybody believe science had anything to do with that event? Flight and atomic bombs? Anybody believe science had something to do with poison gas Iraq sent into Iran? Does anybody believe airplanes fly missionaries around the world with relief aid? See how ridiculous this stuff is? It's so, I'm not going to use the word, it's so silly, people. Don't be intimidated. And by the way, science and religion didn't do anything. People did. The reason for my reason, 9/11, is why does evil exist? I want you to think about that. Why does evil even exist? If we're the process of evolution, why is there evil? Now, somebody might say, well, look at the animal kingdom. Now we got another problem. I've been to the Masai Mara. I've been to the Serengeti. And I've seen animals kill animals. I know that goes on. It's not great. It's part of the fall in my faith. But it's somewhat elegant. Thins out the herd. I can give you a lot of reasons for it. I also learned or observed lions will kill a gazelle. They don't kill 100 gazelles. They kill what they need. The day after 9/11, along with 10 other pastors, we were in New York City. I'll never forget it. We went from fire hall to fire hall to fire hall. You could smell evil. You could taste it. That toxic mix of twisted metal, burning bodies, fuel was dystopian by any degree. And you would say, what would cause someone to do this? What would cause someone to plan this kind of evil? And then somebody will say, well, because there's always a Hitler, there's always a Pol Pot, a Hussein, a Mao. Some people will say, and this argument's Wayne, we weren't as advanced. The problem is the 20th century is the bloodiest century of history, and we were advanced. In fact, Germany put advanced people in the gas chambers, butchers and clockmakers and engineers and lawyers. And that's the end of that argument. So we point to people that we think are outside the norm, but it's all of us. Proverbs says we come out of the womb speaking lies. The Bible says we've all sinned. John MacArthur, since passed, said if everyone in the world started telling the truth, the world would collapse. You ever have somebody die in your family and all the skeletons come out? Oh, Aunt Jane really slept with this person. They had this kid and this happened. And this is every family, people. It's all covered up. There is a propensity in us to do wrong. Now, I want you to think of something else. Let's use more logic. Why do we even know it's wrong? Well, if we are the product of chance, why is anything right or wrong? And the answer is we have a plumb line. We have a standard. If you walked into my home and saw a Wyeth painting and it was tilted, you would say, Bob, you got a level downstairs? Because that picture's way out of whack. Because we know pictures should be leveled. C.S. Lewis, who everybody steals from in Mere Christianity, said the moment you say that one set of moral ideas is better than another set of moral ideas, you are effectually measuring them, listen, by a standard. You know what that standard is? The moral law that God put within us. The Ten Commandments have survived 4,000 years. They're still on the wall of the Senate chambers. If you want to know how great they are, Google the atheist 10 Commandments. Don't do it now. All your phones will go off, and especially older people. Read the atheist 10 Commandments. You'll have another belly laugh. And they're the product of Christendom. So is Hitchens, so is Dawkins. They are the product of a world that was created by the moral standard. Most lawyers know when the Ten Commandments is taught in law school, it's taught as natural law. And there's nothing that drives me more crazy than this. Everybody's answer to everything on earth is the Code of Hammurabi. Oh, why are there 7 days in a week? Can't be the Bible. It's the Code of Hammurabi. What about the Ten Commandments? Nah, forget that. All-time best-selling book of all time, the Code of Hammurabi, which no one has ever looked at, Googled, or read. But everybody acts like it's a coffee table book on display in their home. Of course, great civilizations had laws. 5 great civilizations surrounded Egypt, and by the way, the Jews were in slavery for 400 years. It took them a while to get up to speed. They had an oral tradition that was eventually codified by Moses, to where we get the book of Leviticus, which has laws down to the removal of waste and what we should eat and not eat. And the Bible comes right out of the gate talking about sin and a moral standard within us. Logic tells us if objective moral value exists, God must exist. If there's a moral law, there must be a moral lawgiver. Objective moral value does exist, therefore God exists. Lewis said, and he's right, human beings all over the world, all over the earth, have this curious idea they ought to behave in such a way, and they just can't get rid of it. We just can't get rid of it. Like, there is a right and wrong, and wherever we go, it keeps popping up on us. Again, if you don't believe this is true, you're going to have to answer, why is genocide wrong? Why is human sacrifice wrong? Why are all these things wrong? And then there's this idea, and I think Dostoevsky's right. He's one of the greatest writers of all time. He said, if God doesn't exist, everything's permissible. If God doesn't exist, you can put people in ovens, and you can gas them. You can do whatever you want. You can enslave them. All you need is for God not to exist. The Bible comes right out of the gate and tells us we're fallen, bent on evil. Tells us that the first sin was disobeying God, and then the second sin is murder. See how quickly we jumped? And then 6 chapters later, God's destroying the earth. The beautiful thing is, the Bible tells us we can be delivered. That's the word saved, by the way. If somebody tells you they're saved, it means they've been delivered. We can be delivered. And that's why Jesus came. But you got to ask yourself this question. Why does evil exist? Reason number 7 is a red Schwinn bicycle. Problem is this bicycle's blue and it's a Huffy. Because I got to our prop department too late, and this is the best they could do. When I became a Christian in the early 80s, there was a man named Paul Yonggi Cho. I picked up his book called The Fourth Dimension. At the time, he had the largest church in the world in South Korea. Now, it wasn't a large church, and they were in a stadium setting, although they were 80,000 people at the time. He had started a cell group movement in South Korea, which we would call today home fellowships or small groups. And in the book, it gives the backstory of his life, quite amazing, where he grew up in abject poverty after the Japan occupation, World War II. And he contracted tuberculosis, which was really a death sentence in that part of the world. At that time, a young missionary girl was giving out Bibles in the hospital, and she began witnessing to him, and he began reading the New Testament. When he read the Gospel of John, in his own words, he said he was just in awe of how personal Jesus was with every human being. And even though he came from a Buddhist background, he prayed, God, I don't know what religion's right, but if you're out there, I want to believe in you. And he talks about his conversion experience. He accepts Jesus, and he's healed of tuberculosis. And then finally, at 18, he's called to the ministry. The problem is he's in abject poverty, and he wants to reach the people of Seoul, Korea. And he read that verse in Matthew 7 where Jesus said, ask, will be given to you, knock, and you shall receive, and all that. And he learned over time what he called specific prayers. I never forgot this. This is my takeaway. So in order to do ministry, he prayed for a desk. He could write his sermons out. He prayed for a chair. He could sit down. And he prayed for a red Schwinn bicycle. Now, why a red Schwinn bicycle? He prayed that it was red, and he prayed it would be a Schwinn bicycle because they were rare in South Korea, because he wanted to know when he got it that God heard his prayer. Now, I don't know the theology behind that, nor do I care. Now, I care a little. You don't want to fleece God. Like, God, if I don't get a Lamborghini by Wednesday, that's not what we're doing. But I'll accept Paul Yonggi Cho's prayer. 3 months later, he had a desk, he had a chair, and a red Schwinn bicycle. My seventh reason to believe is answered prayer. Now, I'm smart enough to know the skeptics will drive holes through this one. Come on, Pastor Bob, you got to be kidding. Answer to prayer, that's subjective. That's coincidence. Power of suggestion, embellishing the truth. Yeah, I get it. Here's the problem. It's been way too much of it. It's been so much of it. Archbishop William Temple said, when I pray, coincidences happen. When I stop praying, they don't. One of my favorite prayers in the Bible is 1 Samuel 1, where Hannah is barren. And she prays to God. She said, God, if you give me a child, I will consecrate him to you all of my days. And she gets pregnant. And she names him Samuel, which means, listen, I have asked, and I've received from the Lord. Isn't that interesting? Kind of like the red Schwinn bicycle. She asked for a child, and she said, this came from God. Samuel becomes last of the judges, first of the prophets. He anoints David. We know the story. The other problem with answered prayer is, what about people that remain barren? God not answer their prayer? I taught you guys before, God answers all prayer. Some of it's yes, some of it's no, and what's some of it? Not yet. Yes, no, not yet. In Jeremiah, God said, call to me and I will answer and show you great and mighty things which you do not know. God's like, I'm not going to write my name in the sky. I'm not going to write your name in the sky. But if you call on me, I'll let you know I'm here. I'll reveal myself to you. I'll make myself known. We serve a God that wants to be pursued. Hence Tozer's book, The Pursuit of God. I mentioned when we were at the Masai Mara. It's a strange trip because you have about a 3-hour drive on rickety roads. And all of a sudden you start seeing zebra. And everybody's like, look, zebra, zebra. And then like a day later, everybody's on the phone. Hey, there's a zebra. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. But the coolest thing about going on safari is you don't see anything for a half an hour. And it's almost like God. He wants to be pursued. He wants us to follow. History has given us the Hannahs, the Martin Luther, who was in a severe thunderstorm and said, God, if you get me out of this. He believes that was the spark of the Reformation. John Newton in a violent storm writes Amazing Grace. Dr. Martin Luther King during his struggles. We all have stories about the exact amount of checks that came in the mail for what we need at the right time. We've all been at the right place, had diagnoses overturned, had people spared in car accidents. But Pastor Bob, I'm still struggling with unanswered prayer. Carl Beach is a man you're going to be overwhelmed by. I'm going to show you a video in a few seconds. He's British, so he's hard to understand, but the words are there. It might be hard to read. This is ripped from Instagram. Next week, I'll give you a place, not only to find his story, but a lot of stories that might inspire you. But let's watch Carl Beach.
Quite controversial on one point. I don't believe God wants to heal me from young onset Parkinson's. At least not yet. So if I turn this off now. When I try to speak, I can't speak. And then I can turn it on and I'm back instantly. I was trying to resolve anxiety, chronic anxiety attacks you get when you get brain disease like this, progressive degenerative disease. My walking's terrible. I drag my leg, I get foot drop. And sometimes I shuffle. The impact on my voice was really severe. I just can't get the words to go from my mind to my mouth due to the lack of transfer. But I discovered one night, it was just like a revelation from God really, that I could move myself from fight or flight mode to a calm, comforted mode by recreating the safest place I've ever been, which is mother's heartbeat in the womb. It's just an idea I had, which I now believe was from God. I was just sitting back in a chair and I just started beating my chest at 70 beats a minute. And I found that I could speak completely clearly and my face masking reduced. I could feel it because my face often goes tight, makes it look really miserable. But that's masking in Parkinson's. And I got up and I could walk while I was tapping and instantly I believe it was God showed me the concept of a device. So when I switch this on, the impact is immediate. It's like I've gone back 10 years. But when I switch it off, because I'm now in a very relaxed state internally, that immediately stops and I become far worse. The world's leading speech pathologist has said we've solved the unsolvable problem in speech. I knew I was going to be ill before I was ill. I was in my truck. A song called Chainbreaker came up by Zach Williams, which I've been told to listen to by someone who went on about it so much I ignored him and listened to Pink Floyd instead. And then eventually I put this song on and it broke me. I heard God speak to me. This inner conviction was, son, my grace is sufficient for you. What's coming to you is a gift. 2 Corinthians 12:9. I phoned my wife and I said, God just spoke to me. I was in tears. I said, I think I'm going to be really, really ill. God's not going to heal me, but something amazing is going to come out of it. And she said, you having a breakdown? I went, no, I'm not. I think it's Holy Spirit. She went, yeah, all right. Months and months later, after some strange symptoms were developing, I was diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's. Life expectancy is reduced. They often say Parkinson's life expectancy isn't reduced. That's because age-related, you get it like 70 and you live 10 years with it, you know? But if you get it in your 40s, you might have 15 years. When I was diagnosed, I thought, I think I'll go and die in Florida. Maybe Provence, maybe somewhere just modest like Mauritius. But then I remembered a story about this guy called Damien de Veresta, who was a Catholic priest. When he was ordained, he had a death shroud put on him and he said, to live is Christ, to die is gain. I'm not alive anymore, this is all for Jesus. And he went to serve the lepers on Molokai Island. And eventually, he contracted leprosy. He put his feet in a tub of hot water one night. And he realised he couldn't feel his feet. And he wrote in his journal that day, he said, praise God, finally I'm one of them. And there was me going, well, I've got young onset Parkinson's. I think I'll go to Barbados, die there. I was so convicted. I live in an area where people are chronically ill 30 years before most people, abject poverty, poisoned by a benzene pharmaceutical company that's given them loads of cancers and heart defects. It'll be a Netflix documentary one day. And I'm thinking, no, God doesn't heal me. He can give me joy and strength. And I can show that through suffering you can glorify God as well. And that some of us are called to walk a rutted path. I've had people shout at me for not believing I'm going to be healed, who are wearing glasses. Pray for your eyesight first, dear brother, before you pray for my Parkinson's. We're all going to die. I'll get a new body one day, but maybe I can glorify God by living with a degenerative progressive disease, joyfully. But then, of course, other gifts came. I discovered something which I think could change millions of lives. And I would not be discovering this thing that I'm working on now had I not chosen to joyfully pursue the path that God's placed in front of me.
Who has known the mind of the Lord and who is his counselor? If you could remain tearless through that, God's got a big work. Jesus said in Matthew 7, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open to you. I don't think Jesus gave those words for, man, I need to buy a house next week. Let me seek it. I mean, it's applicable. I think we forget that can be asked, by people that are curious. One of my favorite prayers in the Bible in the New Testament is Cornelius, who was a Roman centurion, not a Jew. And he was told, Cornelius, your prayers and your alms have become before God. A lot of people erroneously tell non-Christians that God doesn't hear your prayers. Yes, he does. And so if you're in disbelief, you're trying to believe, wherever you are on the spectrum of a faith journey, ask. Now you could ask people, you could read books, but at the end of the day, ask God, say, God, would you open my mind? Would you take me on a journey where I could choose? Everybody's born into a faith. Everybody was born either a Baptist, Hindu, Presbyterian, Mormon. There comes a time where you choose your faith, and you have to choose. Your choice is God or natural selection. You're here by chance, and a mindless process produced you. Those are the only two choices. So we've been talking about probability. The probability of any of these three reasons, 3 sevens on a slot machine is 1 in 1,000. The probability of 4 is 10,000. We're up to 7. You know what that probability is now? 16 million to 1. And we're going higher, way higher. Next week, I'm going to throw some of you a bone because you're getting fidgety. Remember Trump said everybody was getting jittery when the stock market went up? I could feel some of you are getting jittery with the moon and rainbows. So we'll go into the Bible next week. I'll give you a little bit. It'll take a month. I'm going to give you a little tidbit on why the Bible is a reason to believe. And then I got some other cool ones in there. But with every eye closed, God, as you sweep this auditorium, I pray that the already convinced God would just be in awe and wonder of what you've done, the things you created. I pray that they would keep one eye open every day, Lord, in all the trials that we go through and all the pain, and see your handiwork. I pray that it would encourage them, put a little skip in their step today, that while we sleep and slumber, things like the moon and rainbows are just doing their job. And then, God, I pray for those who are on some faith continuum towards belief, that they would wind up in this funnel from the fine-tuning of the universe to a bedrock faith, where they understand they are fearfully and wonderfully made, every one of us, in your image. No two thumbprints, no two retinas the same. Our DNA, Lord, coded before time. God, that's my prayer, and I pray it in Jesus' name. Amen.